This is the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer.
Good evening. Demonstrators outside a Manhattan hotel today carried not signs of protest, but signs of thanks and welcome. They were expressing joy at yesterday's release of 5 Soviet dissidents flown to this country in exchange for 2 Soviet spies. Inside the hotel, the 5 expressed their own thanks to President Carter, to Congress, and the American people, and they told how they felt. 2 reports. First, Mitchell Krause in New York.
Their faces told the stories of what they'd been through almost better than their words did. Alexander Ginsburg, human rights activist who had been serving a 3rd prison term in a forced labor camp. Valentin Moros, Ukrainian nationalist who almost died during a prison hunger strike. Georgy Vins, Christian religious dissident who refused to submit to state authority. Mark Dimshitz, Soviet Jew, originally sentenced to death for hijacking a plane to escape to Israel. And Edward Kuznetsov, also involved in the plane incident, a Zionist and a writer who reacted to their sudden freedom.
We are here in the United States, and this is just as incredible as if we had found ourselves on the moon. We have not as yet gained full consciousness. We still feel somewhat ill at ease wearing civilian clothing. We still have not grown accustomed to free faces expressing goodwill.
Georgy Vins, sentenced to exile in Siberia by Soviet authorities for religious activities, rejoiced in his freedom to hold a Bible.
For 5 years, I have been deprived of this holy book.
Для меня нет дороже этой книги.
There is no more thing which I cherish in this life than this Bible.
For Alexander Ginsburg, best known for publicizing Soviet violations of the Helsinki Human Rights Accords, for which he was most recently jailed, freedom meant loss of Soviet citizenship.
Out of my own free will, I would never have left my country. I remember the words of Henry Thoreau, who said that there comes a time when an honest human being should spend his time in prison.
After describing the suddenness of their transition to freedom, Kuznetsov connected the prisoner exchange to the SALT talks.
I consider the major factor which brought the Soviet authorities to consider our release was their expectation concerning the signature, the forthcoming signature of the SALT II agreement.
Despite their release, which one called not a prisoner of war exchange, but a prisoner of ideas exchange, the 5 said little had changed in the Soviet attitude toward freedom, which they warned was the major stumbling block to a real normalization of relations with the West. Mitchell Krause, CBS News, New York.
Only hours before leaving Moscow, the 5 dissidents were informed by Soviet officials that they were being expelled from the Soviet Union. They were given a new suit of clothes and allowed to take nothing with them except a small plastic bag containing a toothbrush, but no razor. 2 American embassy diplomats boarded Aeroflot Flight 315 in Moscow to verify that they were aboard. When the Soviet jet landed at Kennedy Airport in New York, by prearrangement it taxied to a remote part of the field where officials from the White House, State Department, Justice, and Immigration were waiting, along with several Soviet representatives and a van carrying the 2 Soviet spies and their wives. After a 25-minute wait to replace a boarding ramp that would not work, several Americans went aboard the Soviet plane. They found the 5 dissidents seated in a small central compartment surrounded by Soviet officials and looking grim. A White House aide made a brief welcome speech, and a Russian, most likely an agent of the KGB, formally identified and handed over the papers of each man. One of the American officials then went back down to the van where the 2 Soviet spies signed receipts for themselves on its hood in a gusty rain. That done, the spies and their wives climbed one ramp as the dissidents came down another. It was only at that point, according to an eyewitness, when the dazed ex-prisoners came out of the cabin and saw that they were actually in America, that they began to become a little bit alive. Arriving in their downtown hotel, they were given large, luxurious rooms filled with flowers, fruits, and drinks. It was explained that the guards at each end of the hall were for their protection. They could stay as long as they wished or leave, but they would have to learn how to deal with the American press on their own. At first, the 5 men kept wandering back and forth into each other's rooms, making remarks in Russian, until one finally turned to an American host and apologized in English, saying, "You'll understand this is not exactly what we've been used to." Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Washington.
The 2 Soviet UN employees exchanged for the 5 dissidents arrived in Moscow today to a VIP welcome. Several weeping women showered them with flowers. Soviet news media carried no word of the swap, and a Soviet spokesman denied the exchange was linked to the SALT negotiations.
When you work or play too hard, pain can grip you as muscle aches. Break the grip of pain with Bengay. When minor arthritis pain flares up, even simple tasks can be painful chores. Break the grip of pain with Bengay. Bengay's fast, temporary relief breaks up nagging pain and its stiffness where it lives, deep down in your muscles and joints. That's why Bengay is America's #1 selling pain relief rub. So when pain has you in its grip, break the grip of pain with Bengay.
I told him I needed an outdoor paint that was durable. He said Moorguard, Benjamin Moore's latex house paint. That Benjamin Moore dealer, he really knows his paint.
I asked him to match this color exactly. He said, with Regal Wall satin, I can match any color. That Benjamin Moore dealer, he really knows his paint.
He really does know his paint. It's his business. See him for top quality Benjamin Moore paints.
That Benjamin Moore dealer, he really knows his paint.
The controversy over nuclear energy drew almost 10,000 protesters to the Rocky Mountain foothills today. They massed outside the Rocky Flats plant near Denver, where nuclear weapons are made. Barry Peterson has the story.
The day of protest started with a children's rally in downtown Denver. Organizers claiming the actual Rocky Flats site was too radioactive for youngsters. But adults by the thousands came to this chilled, rain-swept field to jeer the weapons plant and cheer those who want it shut down because plutonium may leak into the atmosphere.
It's a death factory, and the people that work there and own it are murderers. They're murderers because the people who live down there in those houses are dying of cancer. They're dying of cancer caused by that plant.
There have been numerous studies about possible health hazards for those who work in the plant and those who live nearby. Those studies remain inconclusive, so there are now new studies underway. Federal officials who supervise the facility say millions were spent to make the plant fireproof, so there would be no more fires like the one in 1969 that did release plutonium. And they argue that the plant should stay open.
If you shut down the Rocky Flats plant today for some reason, our nuclear weapons production would stop. And we can't tolerate that now in terms of defending this country.
Protesters released balloons to symbolize how wind carries radiation and vowed that by next year they will have shut down the facility. But barring an end to the arms race, an end to this country's dependence on nuclear weapons, that just doesn't seem likely. Barry Peterson, CBS News, near Golden, Colorado.
It was just a month ago today that the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island began. It led to the evacuation of children and pregnant women, heightened the debate over nuclear power, and it still isn't over. Gary Shepard has that story.
It was just before 4 o'clock in the morning on March 28th that what was to become the worst nuclear accident in the nation's history began to unfold. Much of the commotion has died down now, and just yesterday, technicians turned off the cooling pumps and allowed the water inside the reactor to circulate by natural convection. That puts the reactor a step closer to cold shutdown, which means the temperature is below the boiling point, but it isn't quite there yet.
Because of the damage to the core from the accident, there are some hot spots within the core. And last time I checked, some of these were still reading in the 300-degree range. Until you get those all the way down, you can't really say you're in cold shutdown.
Middletown seems to have recovered from the initial trauma of the accident, and the people who live around here are trying to forget about what happened 1 month ago. But it's not easy.
They have it practically shut down. So as long as it stays shut down, I guess I'll feel calmer, but not until they say, definitely no more.
So you're still a little worried?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Has your life been changed at all because the accident happened?
No, I really don't think so. I'm living from day to day, working, same as I always did before. I really don't think that much about it anymore.
I'm still concerned. I think it'll take a long time before we can really be at ease.
A new billboard went up recently along the road to 3 Mile Island, but there was more to the message than first met the eye.
Perhaps the most far-reaching impact of the accident here has been the serious erosion of public confidence in the safety of nuclear power. Bills have already been introduced in the Pennsylvania legislature to halt construction of all new plants in this state, and some lawmakers are demanding that once cold shutdown is achieved at this facility, it never be allowed to operate again. Gary Shepard, CBS News, Middletown, Pennsylvania.
2 nuclear power plants that have reactors similar to the ones on 3 Mile Island began to shut down today to make safety improvements ordered by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They are the Rancho Seco plant near Sacramento and one of the 3 reactors at the Oconee plant in South Carolina.
Maxwell House's coffee you can count on. Maxwell House, good to the last drop. Maxwell House is good taste. Maxwell House is good feeling. Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
Maxwell House, coffee you can count on. Always smells good, always tastes good, always good to the last drop.
Maxwell House is good friend. Good to the last drop. Maxwell House. Alcoa can't wait.
If you've ever wondered how something so big got off the ground, part of the answer is light, strong aluminum. Aluminum's high strength and light weight made modern aviation possible. Aluminum is important to most forms of transportation because taking the weight off planes and trucks, and now cars, saves fuel. Aluminum in transportation can be an energy saver today.
We can't wait. We can't wait for tomorrow. Alcoa can't wait.
The reduction in gasoline supplies going to stations around the country, a move triggered by the turmoil in Iran, is being felt now by motorists this weekend in several areas of the country. Limits on the amount of gas that can be purchased are in effect on some major throughways in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. And one of the worst situations is in Northern California. A report on the situation there from Bernard Goldberg.
It's starting to look a little like the old days, the days of the Arab oil embargo of 1973 and 74. Gasoline in the San Francisco Bay Area today was, in a word, scarce. Some stations have shut down altogether, their monthly allotments already sold out. The situation was especially critical in San Jose, where virtually all of the city's gas stations were shut down today. The problem here, according to dealers, is that while supplies are down by as much as 20%, demand for gasoline is up 10% this April over last year.
Well, this county has been one of the fastest growing in the United States, and we've had tremendous growth in this county since last year, and we're being cut back on our gasoline supply, so the difference is just tremendous between what the demand is and what we can supply them.
And as bad as the situation is now, there is a growing consensus that it is going to get worse. As the weather gets warmer, so does the love affair between Americans and their cars, and that almost everyone agrees will mean more long lines at the pump, more stations shut down.
We're watching the travel curve rising, and we're seeing the gasoline availability trend declining. We have seen peak travel periods in about June, so on that basis, and I hope I'm wrong, but on that basis it would seem that it was probably deteriorating and will deteriorate further yet.
It may all look like something right out of the past, but it may also be something right out of the future. Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, San Francisco.
2 oil tankers collided off the Brittany shore of France this morning. One of them sank, but police say the beaches and seabirds were spared a major oil spill disaster and all the crewmen were rescued. It was the 3rd accident in as many years in the area, which was the scene just 13 months ago of the Amoco Cadiz spill, the worst pollution disaster in history. Police now say 50 people were hurt, many of them by gunfire, and 2 were killed in that sniper incident yesterday in the San Antonio Fiesta Parade. The sniper, a 64-year-old recluse named Ira Atterbury, either killed himself or was shot by police as they rushed his barricaded camper. He was described today as a man who feared police were always following him, but as yet no motive has been established in the case. More on the story from David Dick.
The parade, called the Battle of the Flowers, ended before it started in a battle of guns here at the corner of Broadway and East Grayson, where today they were sweeping up the last of the broken glass. The sightseers had come out to have a look. The manager of the tire store where the sniper, 64-year-old Ira Atterbury, had parked his van, said everything had looked normal at first.
He seemed like he was a normal person. He didn't have anything that, you know, scared or made me think that he was scared or anything or going to hurt anybody.
The floats that did not parade yesterday returned for another event this evening, the Fiesta Flambeau Parade. It too down Broadway to the Alamo. There was dancing this afternoon, as officials were determined to save all they could of Fiesta Week.
The fun-making goes on, but so does concern that the sniper incident was symbolic of an increase in street violence here in the Market District during Fiesta.
Violence unrelated to the sniper, but real nonetheless. Merchants and carnival workers complaining of stabbings last night, drunkenness, a decline in business.
We expected a record turnout yesterday, and heck, since they canceled the parade and everything, it just slowed things down quite a bit.
The Fiesta crowd seemed subdued, although many had shaken off any apprehension about more trouble.
That's just one of those things. The guy just happened to be off his rocker, and as far as I'm concerned, it didn't bother me a bit.
David Dick, CBS News, San Antonio.
Federal health officials say a drug used by millions of Americans to control high blood pressure causes cancer in animals and may do so in humans. The drug is Reserpine, sold under more than 30 trade names, including Serapis, Serpacil, Salutinsin, and Rigrotin. The study of the drug, still labeled preliminary, couldn't be obtained from the National Cancer Institute this week, but according to a spokesman for the Institute, tests conducted by a private contractor have been evaluated by Institute scientists and are to be given next week to a panel of outside experts. The findings that the drug causes cancer in animals and might cause it in humans was immediately challenged by the company, which is the largest manufacturer of the drug. Company officials arguing the tests were inadequate and the conclusions incorrect. Officials of the National Cancer Institute, concerned that people with high blood pressure might stop their treatment automatically, issued a statement tonight saying the risk from untreated high blood pressure far exceeds the risk of cancer and advised patients to continue using the drug until they consult their physicians.
People used to preserve their food with a chemical called sodium chloride. Salt, not very effective.
Today, Monsanto makes a chemical preservative called potassium sorbate that keeps food days and weeks longer without spoiling.
No chemical is totally safe all the time, everywhere, but with a worldwide shortage of food, we need chemicals like potassium sorbate. Without chemicals, life itself would be impossible.
Look at all the pluses now in the Hearts 2-in-1 Plus collar. It kills fleas, ticks, even ticks that carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Plus, it's the longest-lasting collar ever from Hearts, so it keeps working on your dog or cat. And that means it helps protect your home and family. The Hearts 2-in-1 Plus collar's even effective if it gets wet. All those pluses add up to long-lasting protection you can trust.
Put the plus on your pet, the Hearts 2-in-1 Plus.
By presidential proclamation, today and tomorrow are designated days of remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust, the victims who died in World War II Nazi concentration camps. The president asked Americans to mark the days with study, prayer, and appropriate commemoration. But in a small town in West Germany today and tomorrow, there is a related but different kind of remembrance. Don Kladstrup reports.
To see them, one might have assumed they were tourists on a holiday rather than former members of an elite Nazi guard. But a crowd of news people and several busloads of riot policemen quickly dispelled any wrong impressions. The occasion was the annual reunion of the Nazi SS Totenkopf Division, the so-called Death's Head Division, one of the most feared divisions in all of Nazi Germany. During the war, most of these men served as shock troops and death camp guards. Today, they gathered to share memories and reminisce about old times. The fact that many in the community objected to their presence didn't seem to bother them.
We have been soldiers in the war.
Such a meeting might have passed unnoticed had it not been for several things which recently raised people's consciousness about the Nazi era. Things such as the current debate over extending the statute of limitations on Nazi criminal prosecution. Another, the recent showing of the American program Holocaust on German TV. All of which helped generate this anti-Nazi demonstration through the streets of the town. Protesters carried signs reading, "Never again, Nazis out." A Death's Head spokesman says that members don't want any trouble, that they just want to go about their business quietly and peacefully. One of their tasks being cooperative work with the Red Cross. As one member said, times do change. Don Cladstrup, CBS News, Arleston, West Germany.
In his commentary tonight, Rod McLeish has some thoughts on that swap of Soviet spies for dissidents.
Last summer was an abysmal time in Soviet-American relations. Things are a lot better this spring, as symbolized by Friday's swap of 5 Soviet dissenters for 2 Russian spies held in this country. A variety of Soviet and American motives lay behind the swap. Some were as simple as the KGB's traditional efforts to get its spies back when they're picked up abroad. But of much greater importance, the SALT, or strategic arms limitation talks, were gaining momentum through the autumn and winter as the secret negotiations proceeded on the dissidents for spies trade. But domestic American doubts about SALT were threatening ratification of the treaty if Presidents Carter and Brezhnev do sign it at the summit. And finally, there was the normalization of Chinese-American relations. The Soviets pondered the dark arithmetic of great power balances, and they seemed to have decided that show and tell time had come. Last Monday, they agreed to the swap. Whatever else it may or may not accomplish, the swap establishes a precedent. We can now bargain to get dissenters out of the Soviet Union, those who wish to go. That's especially important for Jewish activists who are trying to emigrate to Israel. The stickler in such trading is the price we may have to pay. The 2 most notable imprisoned dissenters, Anatoly Sharansky and Yuri Orlov, were not included in Friday's package. One wonders what the price for them will be. We don't keep a cash reserve of captured Soviet spies. Yet the bargaining is worth it. The Soviet dissidents need all the help they can get. The Human Rights Campaign needs action and results, or it's going to turn into a frustrated sentiment. This week, with the swap, a dent was made in the bleak Soviet resistance to human rights.
In an interview released today, President Carter says he now believes it would be a good idea for a president to be elected to 1 6-year term rather than be eligible to run for a second 4-year term. His reasoning, then it wouldn't appear that presidents did things for political reasons. And our annual reminder, daylight savings time starts early tomorrow morning in most parts of the country, and you should set your clock ahead 1 hour.
All over America, all kinds of people are discovering the joy of cooking. The General Electric food processor. From simple suppers to fancy feasts, the GE food processor is the joy of cooking because it makes hard work the joy and gives you time to make great-looking, great-tasting meals. Night after night. The GE food processor. Buy one now and get a $5 rebate.
What happened?
We lost all our traveler's checks.
Don't worry. I called the American Express.
Oh, they weren't American Express.
Ah, most people carry American Express. Let me think.
Look, make sure you ask for American Express traveler's checks by name. Don't leave home without them.
4 years ago this weekend, the last Americans pulled out of Vietnam. This week, we traveled around the country looking up some of the people who were household names during the war years. Bruce Morton has a report.
Helicopters skittering over Saigon's rooftops. Last photos of a lost war. Now, 4 years later, what has Vietnam taught us? We asked some of the people whose lives the war changed. Advocates, critics, fighters, victims. What did we learn? We asked Lyndon Johnson's special assistant, Walt Rostow, now a university teacher.
The nation should not make a treaty unless it's prepared to see its commitments through to the end.
We asked former POW Jeremiah Denton, a retired admiral now.
A lot of hate got into it, a lot of dissent. I think after the bombing in December 1972 in North Vietnam, we had the war won militarily.
I believe that years from now, 2 years or 4 years or 10 years, that people will say, what did you do in 1968?
We asked Eugene McCarthy, who ran for president against the war.
The one lesson which I would think is valuable is that no president for some time will feel he can engage the country in a war and without anticipating social criticism and even political opposition.
John Kerry, now an assistant district attorney, but then a Vietnam veteran against the war, isn't sure that's a good thing.
What Vietnam has done is probably made it quite difficult for the President and the Congress to tell the American people that this is a place or this is an issue which we must take a stand on, and a place where we have to draw the line.
We asked General William Westmoreland, the commander.
We had people that were actually waving the flag of the enemy. Our open society and our political democracy were exploited.
Ernest Medina, commander, Charlie Company, 1st of the 20th, Americal Division, the company which assaulted a village we called My Lai.
Everybody wasn't totally committed to it. They were back at their fire bases. They were back in Saigon, Da Nang, or Chu Lai, where they had their hot baths and their floor shows and stuff like this. It became very difficult. You know, it became a matter of survival.
Peg Mullen, whose son Michael was killed by American artillery, the subject of a book called Friendly Fire.
I think they haven't learned anything from the Vietnam War. I think that they can't learn anything from the Vietnam War until they've learned or admitted that it was a blunder, a mistake, and they haven't learned enough about it yet to admit that it's a blunder.
If U.S. military forces are engaged, they should be used, short of nuclear weapons, to achieve a limited, clearly defined objective, but used at full strength.
If we weren't going to do anything, we shouldn't have been there to begin with.
You think the Vietnam War was worth the price you...
It was worth nothing. It wasn't worth the loss of one boy.
If we do go to war, we should use the power that is available to us to conclude the war in a reasonable period of time. I think we have learned that the staying power of American public opinion is limited.
It's an anger that we'll live with all our lives. I wouldn't want to get over it.
No one has a monopoly on the truth on this, least of all myself. I'm asking for a closer, less passionate, more objective view in retrospect.
Not yet, apparently. Not yet. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
That's the news. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News, New York. Good night.
Philadelphia Phillies. That's right. And what kind of aftershave you using these days?
I'm an Aqua Velva man, Joe.
Oh, that's right. A man wants to smell like a man.
Yeah, Aqua Velva's got a great clean fragrance. And it's cool and refreshing, too. And one more thing.
What's that?
There's something about an Aqua Velva man.
Introducing Mega Vitamins from Geritol, so you know it's potent.
We're just starting out, and we know it's going to take a lot of doing.
But we're going to work hard.
And take good care of ourselves.
And since I started taking new Mega Vitamins, I'm getting all the potency I want from a vitamin. With Mega Vitamins, you're sure of getting really potent amounts of those vitamins your body uses up every day, plus all the iron of regular Geritol. Mega Vitamins from Geritol.
So you know it's potent.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer. Tomorrow's guest on Face the Nation will be the Republican Senator from Tennessee, Howard Baker.
What caused the worst nuclear accident in the United States to date, and can it happen again? Watch Fallout from 3 Mile Island on CBS Reports Tuesday at 8, 7 Central and Mountain.
This is CBS.